Hey, Marina, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Hey, Ricky. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Hey, Marina, can you take us back to your early days and tell us how you got into tech in the first place?
Yeah, of course. So I graduated college in 2009, which here in the States was a very difficult time to get a job. So I was bartending first year after college, as one does when they cannot get a job and has a lot of student loans to pay off. And in that process, I met a few folks that were working for a logistics company that was actually hiring. So I did not know what logistics was. I had to Google it, but I applied anyway and got the job, which shows a lot. And that's how I ended up in sales. And I really took to it right away, right? I cut my teeth in the absolute grind of a sales job where you're prospecting all your own leads, you're calling them yourself. It's super transactional. You're making 100 dials a day and all that. But it taught me a lot about grit. I was excited to be getting up and going to an office every day and not behind a bar for a while. So that's how I got into it. And it was great. It was a great place to cut my teeth. And then after that, I pursued a career in what was my passion at the time, because the advice that you got was go work in something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. So I went to work for a fashion startup based here in Chicago. It was a great experience. We got acquired after about 2.5 years of my being there. And so we had the pre-acquisition kind of total startup life and then the post-acquisition, good, bad, and ugly that came along with that. So I really got to experience what all happens before and after an exit, which was great. And then after fumbling through a couple of other jobs, that's how I landed at ShipBob. So I've been with ShipBob for 5 years now, and it has just been fantastic. I started probably 150th employee. We are well over 2,000 now. We had 5 fulfillment centers when I started. We've got over 50 now. So it's been really tremendous to see the growth and be a part of that.
So very awesome. And Marina, you've got an interesting role. You look after sales and customer success. Can you tell us a little bit about how did that come about and what does that entail?
Yeah. So I've always been in sales. My whole career has been in sales, and I liked it that way, right? I like to sell the dream. I don't want to know what happens after I sell the dream. I'm just walk away and sell the next dream. And so about 2 years ago, I just had come back from maternity leave with my second little one. My boss came to me and said, "How would you like to go oversee the success team for a while?" And I was like, no, that's okay. We can find someone else. And he said, "Reason I'm asking you is because we'd love to help our success team think a little bit more like a sales team, be a little more proactive, look for some of those red flags that we're seeing of customers aren't happy, but they're telling us they're happy, but let's get a step or two ahead of them." And then also, we used to offer kind of one product, one service, and now we have a whole suite of offerings. So we need to teach our success managers how to upsell, cross sell, do all of those things. So begrudgingly, I said yes. I'm just trying to be a person of the company and do what they've asked of me. And it was the best experience of my career. I could not say more great things about making that change, just because it took me from what I was comfortable with and what I'd been doing for so long to well out of my comfort zone. I had to learn so much of the nuance of our business that I wasn't familiar with, which was really great. And then I did have to see what happens after we sell the dream. And so it allowed me to create much better alignment from the sales side to the success side when I came back to oversee sales. So I was only with the success team for about 3 quarters. They had to pull me back, kicking and screaming, back to sales, and it was amazing. And so now I think we have just better alignment from the BDR point where the prospect enters our system to when they're a long-term customer with us.
And how's the experience in customer success change your and team's approach when it comes to selling then, Marina? I'm quite interested to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm real stickler for overselling, right? We do not overpromise anything. We've got fantastic sales engineers that keep our sales team and everyone connected across product and across all of operations, because oftentimes salespeople get excited about what's on the roadmap, or we'll say, "Hey, yeah, of course we could do that for you." And we just need to reel it back in and set realistic expectations for our customers. And we had just had a customer last quarter that would have been massive for us, would have been a phenomenal customer. We were at the finish line and we realized that they had a requirement that we couldn't fulfill. And I think before I had that experience with success, excuse me, I probably would have said, just push it over the line. Product will figure it out. We'll get there. And we just pulled back and we said, you know what? We really can't do this for you. I don't think you're going to have the best experience if you go with us now. It's on the roadmap. Let's reconnect in 6 months. And they were so grateful for the honesty and the candor and the visibility. I'm confident we'll work together in the future. But I think that taught me just the timing is everything for these things.
Can I honestly say that is the best advice for people? If you're not ready for that customer and you don't have what they need, just be honest and tell them.
Yep.
You generally will win them back. People love honesty, and it's just something that it's hard. And I think you're getting both sides. You've got to see what happens when you do oversell something that you can't fit in. But the other thing that I think I was really keen to learn a bit about is, okay, we've been in situations like this before where you've got a customer success team and you want them to have a little bit more ability to upsell or cross sell because you've got a huge suite of new products coming. How was that journey? And look, what things did you lean on with that team in terms of helping them just get some basic sales skills under their belt?
I'm a huge believer in just like outside material because what resonates with one person may not resonate with another. So I listen to so many podcasts. I read what I can. I just absorb information in different ways. Scrolling through LinkedIn, sometimes something will be just so powerful for me, but I can't guarantee it'll be the same thing. So, like a ton of exposure into outside sources. Like our success team is one of the busiest teams I've ever worked with. They have so much to do at any given time. And so they weren't taking the time for that outside exposure, right? It's like when you finally get a break, you're just like, I need to unplug. And so I wasn't trying to add more to their plate, but I was guiding them in the directions of where to look and what to look for. So got them thinking about that. I got them to understand that what they were doing already was sales, right? Like they were already keeping a customer happy. In our quarterly business reviews, we're going over success metrics. We're asking what went well, what didn't. Here's our opinion on that. So the segue was there, and we were perfectly set up for that very analytical, very kind of consultative sell to say, listen, you guys are doing so great in the US. Why wouldn't you expand to Canada? That seems like a natural next step. Let's take a few SKUs to Canada. And so I think there's a connotation for non-sales people with sales. I don't want to do this. It's too much. It's too much pressure. And I'm like, it's just having conversations. You guys already have the rapport. You have the relationship. You're so far along. You've got the trust of this merchant. And if you're making suggestions that are truly great for their business, then it's just a no-brainer for everyone.
I fell into the trap that you try and treat both teams the same and you give them a quota. So how have you set up those teams for success? Do they carry a quota?
Yeah, I think revenue retention and growth is so important. In our business and e-commerce fulfillment, there's an element of seasonality that you have to look out for. So a success manager, my biggest customer sells swimsuits, and it's December. And I'm like, more the reason to get them into Australia. Like swimsuits are hot, right? So it's like teaching them to control their controllables was huge. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in a revenue retention and growth metric. We did not have that at the time that I joined the success team because it felt to be too far out of your control. And so we worked really closely with our revenue operations team to make it attainable, to make sure the goals are reasonable. They're challenging, but attainable. And we had a really good attainment rate across the team.
Nice. Well done to you. Marina, the other thing you mentioned was scaling, right? You were 150th and it's now a 2,000 plus odd company, right? That's huge growth in however many years. So what were some of the challenges that you experienced firsthand when growing a team that was going gangbusters? What were some of the key lessons that you learned?
Yeah. One of the things I remember when we first went remote was during COVID, like everyone else, in March of 2020. And one of the things someone said to me was like, oh, it just sucks. We solve so many problems in front of the water cooler, passing by someone in the hallway, and you stop and have that conversation. And I'm like, yeah, this is probably a great forcing function to stop solving problems that way, right? And create process, SOP. We were a startup. We were moving super fast. When I joined, we had just closed our Series C. So there was pressure to take that financing and grow tremendously. And so we were moving a million miles an hour. And now you look back on it, oh, I wish we took the time to set up those SOPs because we're doing that retroactively now and at scale. It's a lot more difficult. So just creating. And then the other thing was I knew everyone in every department that I needed to talk to. I had my go-to people in product. I had my go-to people in operations. And it's then we hire hundreds of new people. You can't know everyone. So you can't rely on just having those relationships in place. I think it's a great thing. It was hard for me though, because being a product of just startups, I'm like, I don't need the red tape. I don't need to fill out a ticket. Just I'll Slack you and you answer me and we get this thing solved. So definitely a learning curve there.
Processes can obviously hinder your growth, but you need that, right, for scale and repeatability. And what about hiring, Marina? Like when it came to that, when you had to put so many bodies on, did you lean on hiring profiles? Was it still gut based? Was it, let's just get on a call, have a good chat? If I like what you've got to offer, you're hired. Like, how did that approach change for you?
So I'm actually very proud to say that my team size, my core team, the AE team size hasn't changed at all from when I started to today. So we've become tremendously more productive, but not by just adding headcount. And I have been a part of companies that were just trying to grow revenue at all costs, which was really a trend in the 2010s. And we are so focused on healthy growth and profitability and profitable contribution margin that we weren't really adding a ton of headcount to the sales team. But the rest of the company, what I really appreciate was I was very involved in cross-functional hiring because we have to collaborate with these folks, right? So I'm doing manager interviews for product people and operations people and things I have very limited knowledge about, but just someone is asking, can you work with this person? Can you see yourself going and collaborating with this person? Because we really need everyone to be able to have that kind of strong relationship. So in that sense, I think it's really important. Like my hiring committees are usually not even people that are going to work with someone day to day. I need that outside
Right.
perspective to come in and just tell me, is this person a good fit culturally? And
Mm.
would you be able to work with them if you needed to?
Nice. Great tip.
And so do you guys set up a hiring committee, hiring major roles, and then everyone gets to interview that person? Or is it like, how many interviews would you have with a prospective candidate?
Yeah, so I just went through a long search for a VP of mid-market sales and many months. And we wanted to measure twice and cut once and just get it right. I had set it up as a 4-round, 5-round interview process. So the initial screen was with myself and then my mid-market sales manager who was going to be reporting to this person. First thing I needed was to make sure that he was going to be bought in because this was going to be his new boss, right? So we would screen the initial candidates. After that, it would be a mix of individual contributors on that person's team. So a couple from the BDR team, a couple from the AE team who would also be working under that person, but not directly reporting to them. And that was more of a culture fit. Is this a person you could see leading your team? Do you see their vision? Are you getting aligned with them? Do you like what they have to say? The next round, which I did a presentation, which I'm guilty of not doing in the past. And I'm really glad I did it this time because it wasn't necessarily about the content. It was just like, how do they approach a presentation, right?
Right.
Is there a deck? Do they ask questions before? Do they try to reach out to the people they've already interviewed with to get some tips? All of that was super important to me. So the presentation, the panel for that was not people that they were going to be working with directly. It was cross-functional, it was other leaders in the company. So it was non-biased, which I liked. And then the final round was with my CRO and my CEO. So I wanted their buy-in as well because this was such a pivotal role for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Quite
it.
a thorough process.
Yes.
What's been your experience? Because some people just freeze when it comes to interview process, especially when some of the best sales hires that we've had, you put them in front of stage or, as you mentioned, a committee in front of 3 people, they just freeze. They're great in their day-to-day work. So what's been your experience there and how do you get past some of that to ensure that it's not a biased approach to hiring?
I think because I'm hiring for sales, I have a cheat code because I need them to not
Mm,
freeze, right? You're going to be put on the spot constantly in front of customers. You're going to be put on the spot getting objections and getting difficult questions thrown at you. And so it's actually part of the process is vetting for how well I throw some curveball questions in there, not because I care about the answer or not because I want to stump them or throw them off their game. I just want to see how they approach something that was unexpected,
mm,
right? And there's not one right answer, but if they approach it and it throws them into a panic and completely throws them off their game, that might just not be the person for me in this particular
mm.
position.
Hey, Marina, I want to go back to what you said about effectiveness of your team. So you're probably one of the only leaders who didn't go hire a bunch of bodies because there was that pressure, right, for top line growth, especially if you look back at 2020. I think it sounds like that's when you had Series C. So how did you fend off the board and the exec team to go, actually, this is what I'm going to do and I'm just going to get more out of what I've got? How did you actually go about achieving that? What were the steps that you took and actually materializing some of that success?
I'd love to take credit for that, but I was begging for headcount. It was my CRO that was saying, "No, slow down. We're gonna see what we can make do." Because remember, we're in a not straight SaaS. We're asset-based
Right.
company. So we also own warehouses and we're very high cash burn business. So I think with such a low contribution margin, like every dollar matters. And so before we went to say, let's just go fill some bodies and raise quotas and get to a higher number, we said, what aren't we doing? And one of my greatest reliefs in life was realizing how much I don't know because then I was like, oh my God, there's so many answers out there. I just don't know them yet. This is great because we can solve any problem. And once I had that realization, and that was around the time I started really taking in a bunch of content, then I was like, okay, you know what? We have so much work to do, so much runway to improve our sales process, to get a methodology in place, to pull these levers, to do some target account selling and all of these things that we're still doing. We've just moved our BDR team to a truly customized approach. We're just working off of a target account list. And there's still more runway beyond that. So I think once we had that realization, like my team, it's shocking how much of the team we've retained from when I started in 2018 to today, because their quotas have gone up monumentally, but we've also
Right.
given them all the tools and all the resources to be able to attain and keep growing.
And then they're making more money and they're happy in their
Yeah.
job and they continue their personal growth. So instead of flooding the team with 50 new people, you've maximized the 50 people you already have, for example.
Exactly. And we hate that constant hiring and layoff culture that just is like, there's a lack of psychological safety and people are constantly worrying about their jobs. So like we've had to do layoffs, but we were very calculated about it because we don't want to be the company doing layoffs every year where people aren't bought in because they're always scared that tomorrow's their last day.
Yeah, well said. Can you talk us through your forecasting methodology, Marina? Like, how do you do that for new sales as well as your upsell? What's your rigor?
Yes. I don't know if you guys are spending much time with Halloween right now, but like one of the greatest jokes on the internet right now is like a haunted house, but like the worst kind of revenue forecasting for a sales leader is realized revenue. So we forecast on realized revenue, like what the revenue has to come in.
Yeah.
So it's not on contract values and it's daily. So it is like, what will this merchant do every single day for the rest of this quarter? So there has been a lot of trial and error. And so our forecasting process is now basically like a triangulation of several inputs that we put together with our RevOps team. We've gotten quite good at it, but it was such a shot in the dark because our success hinges on the success of the other company. So if you own a company selling harmonicas and you do a huge sale on your harmonicas and you sell 1,000 units and everything is going great, and then the next day you run out of inventory and the ship that was supposed to bring you more inventory just drowned. It's a very extreme example, but these things happen, right? And so all of a sudden we
Yeah.
were forecasting you to do 1,000 a day, and now you're going to do no more for the rest of the quarter. So
Right.
it's like being able to balance those completely outside your control factors and then just getting really close to our customers and asking, what could the points of failure be? Where is there potential for this to go south for you? And finding that balance, like every sales leader has to, between being conservative enough, but then also not looking like you're sandbagging. So it's been fun. I would
Yeah.
say that from here on out, I am well prepared for any kind of forecasting after having done this for a few years.
And has the macroeconomic downturn in the last 12 months made that process that much harder? And have you had to bring in additional layer of process changes to accommodate for that?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the book, The Jolt Effect, but
Yeah.
a great book, right? And it just perfectly outlines what's happening now. So the great news is we've built ourselves up to be what I'd like to believe is a category leader. So I don't find us losing to our competitors very often, but this year we are finding ourselves losing to no decision, or losing to the status quo, or losing to, yeah, our current solution isn't perfect, but it's good enough that we don't want to take the risk. So this year has been tricky, but I feel a lot of comfort in having identified the problem. So I had my entire mid-market team read this book. It resonated with everyone. It was so cool. We had a whole book club discussion. Our sales engineers read it. It was awesome. And so we just started approaching our teams differently because fulfillment is such a huge undertaking. If you're going to switch fulfillment partners, it's not just a digital migration, it's a physical migration. You're going to move all your inventory from one warehouse to another. There's going to be downtime in your business. And so I've gotten my team pretty good at like sussing out when someone's just not a serious buyer, and that's okay too. You treat them well, but you spend all your time on those people, right? Versus someone where you see like true buying signals, true intent to make a change. And if they are fitting well in our ICP, like we are closing that customer.
Nice. Hey, you mentioned about reading book as a group and then sharing the learnings from it. Outside of that, Marina, what's one or two key tactics that's worked for you to make sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction and you sharing that knowledge with the wider group in the business?
Not to make this a plug for Sales Assembly, but I love Sales Assembly. Like we have all of our reps go through Sales Assembly certifications, which I think is really helpful, especially younger reps, newer to the business, but then also the peer groups to me, because I'm like, listen, you're tired of hearing shit from me. Like you've been
Yeah.
hearing my voice for 5 years. I'm so sorry. Go hear it from someone else. And so they go and they go to the peer groups and they hear other reps in a multitude of companies, different industries and everything, having some of the same challenges as them. And then they go to a session and hear another sales leader saying, maybe something I've said 100 times, but it doesn't matter because now it's coming from
Mhm.
someone else and it's way cooler coming from them. And so I just love exposing them again to that outside influence and those outside voices because you don't know who and what will
Yeah.
resonate with someone at any time.
Yeah. Hey, just another question from that. Sounds like you've had a very rewarding career at ShipBob, right? You've gone from 150 employee to SVP, running sales and customer success. So promotional pathway is obviously something the company really admires or respects. What's been your view, Marina? What have you come and done for your teams and for the business to ensure that continues and people feel like they've got a career they can make out of it at ShipBob and it's not just a job?
Yeah. This year being a tougher year for new business and us having some aggressive growth goals, I would definitely say that as a leadership team, we overshot on quotas. And obviously, when less than 50% of your team is attaining quota for the first time in 5 years, you have to take some accountability for that. And so I think that there's one of our core values as a company is be humble. And there's so much humility in saying, hey guys, we messed this up and we're going to roll it back a little bit. And so that's what we've done after we listened to our teams. One of those things that I never want to be that company that's, hey, we have a problem. We're like, here's a gift card, here's some pizza, solve it that way. And people are like, hey, we're really struggling. I'm like, no, you're fine. So we took a lot of accountability on the quota piece. We tried to right size quotas. Usually we have a large jump from Q3 to Q4, given that it's our biggest quarter for e-commerce, but we kept quotas flat quarter over quarter, which I think the team really appreciated. And just to say, look, there were going to be things out of our control. They're out of your control as well, but no one is in sales to make less money this year than they made last year, right? So stick with us. We're going to get you back on track. Let's revisit the comp plan. This comp plan may have worked for us 3 years ago, but it's not working in this environment. How do you guys want to be paid? And so having those open and honest conversations, and it really starts at the C-suite with us, where our C-suite team is having those conversations with us and we're having those conversations with our teams. And I just think that humility and that openness and that willingness to acknowledge that you may have made a mistake as a leadership team and let's walk it back a little bit goes a really long way.
Yeah, agree.
Imagine there's not a leadership team alive that hasn't overshot their expectations of financial outcomes at least once in their career. I've done it. You've done it, Ricky. We've definitely been there. And it is a difficult thing because you can keep pushing your team to achieve things that are unachievable. We can have honest conversations and be like, okay, cool. We wanted to hit here. We're not going to hit here, but let's go for this, right? It's second best, but it's what is actually achievable in a market. And there are things like where you guys are at the moment, there are outside influences. It doesn't matter how good your salesperson is, they can't control that. And so how have you gone? It's probably something more that the C-suite would have done, but is that something that your C-suite did with the board together? They all sat in a room and just were like, hey guys, this is not achievable. This is not where we're going to get to this year. Is it something that you as a company put presentations together, worked through? Because it sounds like you guys did where you went, oh, well, we can't hit enough. It was an identification process of this is a reason why, and then discussions follow.
Yeah. The nice thing is we're on track to make our entire company number. And that is on the backs of those existing merchants that we were able to like land and expand, right? So it's a strange dynamic because this year overseeing new sales, I'm like, oh, I hate missing my number, hate nothing more than missing my number. But I love to see that the work that I put in last year seems to be working, right? Because our existing teams are growing. So the board's not that pissed at us, which is nice. I think, again, that same level of humility and acknowledgement goes a long way with them. Whatever our C-suite has done over the last 9.5 years to establish the relationship with the board that they have, it seems like a very open and honest relationship. So we take accountability very early, right? We don't mess around. Like when we see things are off track, we'll do that reforecast early because no one likes to be surprised by these things. And so I do it with my boss when I see my quarter is off track and it goes upward the same way. And yeah, everyone just, as long as you can explain why, I think people like to understand the reason behind it and what you're doing about it. And so we're always very proactive in that.
That's the best advice. Two things, right? You know why something has gone wrong and get in there early, super early. Hey, this has gone wrong and this is why, and here's my reform. So I think most people, whether you're reporting to your C-suite or to your boss or you're a salesperson reporting up, if you can at least give people that, they're not surprised. And surprise is the worst thing in business, right? You just don't know and it hits you. Usually right before you have to rock into the board and they're like, oh, actually, here's my reforecast. So thank you. This will be a fun discussion today.
Yeah,
Exactly.
let's not do that.
No.
Marina, you come across as someone who actually invests in themselves quite highly. You're always looking at outside sources, whether it be Sales Assembly or LinkedIn and whatnot. I assume you've had great mentors along the way. What have you learned? What's been your top 2 or 3 lessons that you've learned from your career to date?
Yeah, great question. So one of my first mentors was a former manager of mine at a previous job, and she and I did not get along when I started. I thought she was a jerk. She didn't help me. She didn't give me the time of day. And I later came to learn she ended up standing up in my wedding, just to show you how that relationship did a 180.
Wow.
But I later came to learn that she's the kind of person where you have to earn her attention. You have to earn her buy-in. And that management style was a tough love approach, right? Of something that may not fly as well today, but she gave the majority of her attention to her top performers. And if you wanted some of that attention, you had to get there. Of course, the competitive, somewhat spiteful person in me was like, I'm going to earn that attention, right? Like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to crush my number, and she's going to be forced to give me that attention. And for better or worse, again, controversial kind of leadership style, but it worked really well for me because it also made me accountable to my number. My number wasn't something that was happening to me. My number was something that I was in charge of. And so everything else wasn't happening to me. I was in charge of it. And I remember one time there was a team outing. They were like going boating or something after work, and we're all so pumped to go. But I was at it was like almost the end of the month, and I was at like 40%. And I think she had said, listen, of course, like, you're welcome to go. It's a team outing. It's entirely up to you. And I was like, oh God, it is not entirely up to me. I should definitely not go on this boat. I should keep working, right? I'm at 40% the month.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go on the boat. It just wouldn't have felt right. Like, I wasn't feeling celebratory. And I think that also went a really long way in my career progression. And just, again, to take that accountability, even though it sucks in the moment.
Yeah. Self-awareness, right? I think that plays such a big part. I've not met too many people, honestly speaking, who have had the awareness to go, I'm at 40%. There is no way you guys are coming in town and I'm going to go partying with you. In fact, it works the opposite way. They're almost coming up to you and telling you how great the next quarter or month's going to be because my pipeline's huge. So kudos to you for standing up.
Always a weird discussion to have. My next quarter is going to be so much bigger because my pipeline is massive because I haven't closed any of it.
Because I sandbagged everything for next quarter.
Weird thing to tell your boss. That's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I'll say that has been an amazing lesson that I have learned was from my current boss, Paul. I report to our CRO, is consistency and leadership. Like, my favorite thing about Paul is I know what to expect. I always know what to expect. And it took some time, right? We've worked together for 5 years, but I come prepared. I know what questions he's going to ask. I know where he's going to poke holes. I could put on my Paul hat. It doesn't have to be the way I think, because I can have a difference of opinion. He and I can debate it, but I can almost anticipate where he'll be coming from. And that's because of his consistency, right? And that's a consistency across the board, and not just his thinking, but like his mood. Like, he's just always positive no matter what's going on. And I think one of the scariest thing is a volatile boss where you don't know what you're going to get that day. So I really strive to maintain that level of consistency with my teams.
Yeah, plays a huge part. Hey, would love to take you through a quick fire round, Marina. Most of them are quite easy. There is one that we'll save to the last, and there's right or wrong for that. But let's start off with an easy one. What's your favorite sports team?
Chicago Blackhawks.
Oh, of course. Yeah, they're doing well.
Off to a good start.
The fact you had to pause. How about favorite music genre?
Ooh, I'm a rock and roll girl, like old school rock and roll.
There you go, Sean.
Say rap. I'm happy. Yeah. Anytime any guest we have on that doesn't say rap, I'm like, yes.
Which has only been, what, 2 now?
2? Yeah, 2 out of 20. So
that's it. Favorite movie of all time, Marina? Do you have one?
So corny, but it's got to be Titanic. It's just a cinematic classic.
Oh,
it's the first Titanic. Surprisingly, that's the first Titanic vote. I would have expected a lot more.
And what about favorite place to visit or a bucket list item that you haven't been to yet?
Yeah. So honestly, favorite place to visit is New York. I just feel like I should have lived my whole life in New York. My brother lives there. I'm taking my 4-year-old there for the holidays this year just to go show her the lights.
Nice.
So anytime there's a client or anything, I'm always like, yeah, I'll go see them. So bucket list item is Greece. My husband and I were supposed to go there for our honeymoon. And we got married, and then we were like, oh, let's go next year, not rush it. And then we got pregnant, and then COVID happened. Then we got pregnant again. And so here we are. I might move to Greece one day.
If it makes you feel any better, it was 10 years before I took my wife on our.
It actually does.
That's right. That was like a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, it was right. And it was right in the middle of COVID. So we couldn't go anywhere super fun because COVID. So we went slightly up north in the state we live in. So I don't think it was quite what I promised her. every year as I delayed it.
Yeah.
Go somewhere amazing.
Gonna
And
get
then I
better
was like,
every
this
year.
is the year. And I was like, this is the year to do it. I'm like, honey, all is going to take you somewhere amazing, but COVID. So we'll just have to do this quick, cheap trip up.
Expectations were so low anyway by this point in time.
Yeah.
It couldn't
You
have
remember-
gone wrong. Yeah.
You
Stand
remember
Just
back
going
what
to
I did?
McDonald's would have been a win. Yeah.
Stand back yourself.
That's it.
I learned from the best.
And this is the last one, Marina. You cannot get this wrong, right? We know you're on the right team. So peanut butter, crunchy or smooth? How do you like yours?
Crunchy. There's only one right answer.
Right
Yeah.
answer.
Exactly. Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing all your insights. It's been fun.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. This was so fun.
Awesome. Thank you.